Hello everybody. Today we're going to talk about obesity in America. So we've talked a bit about diet and nutrition, and you know that Americans are less healthy than French people. So we're going to focus today on obesity, which means, extreme overweight. And we're going to look at the problem of obesity in America and the causes for obesity in America. So let's move to the first point. So in America, obesity is now called an epidemic. An epidemic means a disease that has spread and affects lots of people. Obesity is considered an epidemic in America because 2/3 of Americans are overweight or obese. And this has changed greatly. So in the last 40 years, the prevalence of obesity has increased 50%. By that I mean, in the last 40 years, the number of obese and overweight Americans has increased by 50%. Now this is a real problem because obesity causes a lot of serious health problems such as diabetes, heart problems. It has been linked to cancer. It's also linked to high blood pressure and high cholesterol. In fact, 1 in 10 American deaths is due to obesity. So now let's talk about the causes for this epidemic. We're going to kind of group it into 2 different causes. One is physical activity at work and leisure time. The other cause is, of course, food. So first, let's look at work and leisure time. So in the past 40 years, we have a lot more desk jobs. That means that people just sit at their desk to do their work. As you know, technology has greatly changed the way that people work in America, and it has made it easier for people to sit when they do their job. So technology is part of why we don't have to work as much physically. So we sit a lot in America. In fact, Americans spend 55% of their waking hours sitting down. That means that when we are awake, not asleep, 55% of the time we are sitting, which means we're not burning a lot of calories. Similarly, our leisure time is also spent sitting. Now, you've heard about leisure activities with Americans, and you know about the word couch potato. So what studies have found is that people are exhausted, and they spend their leisure time when they get home from work sitting, doing nothing. In fact, when researchers looked at how many people exercise in their leisure time, they found that only 5% of adults spend their leisure time exercising. The other 95% spend their leisure time doing activities that are not physical, so sitting and watching TV or playing on the internet. So now let's move to the other main cause for the obesity epidemic, and that is food. So there are a few reasons that food has caused this increase in obesity in America. The first thing I'd like to look at is the increased portion sizes. So that means the amount of food that we eat. So for example, soda sizes today are 52% larger than they were 20 years ago. And if you look at the picture here, you can see that, for example, a hamburger today has 257 more calories than a hamburger 20 years ago. Similarly, you can see the size of the cookie has more than doubled in the past 20 years. So today, if you go to a restaurant or a store and you get a cookie, it will have, on average, 275 calories. 20 years ago, if you had a cookie, it was only about 55 calories. That is a huge increase. Americans are very concerned with value sizing. So that means getting the most food for your money. A great example of value sizing is supersizing at McDonald's. So in the past, when you went to McDonald's, they would ask you if you want to supersize your meal, which means you get a larger order of French fries and a larger soda for a very small price. A lot of Americans would choose to supersize their meal because of value sizing. So they're getting more food for the money they pay. Now the other issue is not with portions, it's with the amount that we eat and the number of times we eat in a day. So 20 years ago, they found that Americans on average ate 3.8 times a day. So that would be meals and snacks. Today, Americans eat 4.9, so almost 5 times a day. So we're eating bigger portions and we're eating more often. So these two things together mean that we are eating a lot more food and we're spending a lot less time doing physical activity to burn off those extra calories. So in conclusion, obesity is an epidemic in America. And we can look at the causes and put them into two categories. One is physical activity, which has decreased, and the other is food, which has increased. Now, we have made some small changes to try to fight this epidemic. So, for example, McDonald's no longer has the supersize option. You cannot supersize your meal at McDonald's anymore. However, these changes have not been enough, and obesity is still a major epidemic in America.